All right, so in the final video, we are going to just make one more quick scene, add a few more little touches, and then talk about how to export. So just to recap what we did, we made some scenes and we added them to a separate pre-comp so that we can have them as sort of separate scenes all together. So I'm just going to make another scene, duplicate scene number 2. Now I have scene number 3, and you can just click on that so I can go to main comp. I can bring down scene number 3, and we also want to come in here and do some editing to this. I'm gonna hit U on the keyboard, make sure I don't have any keyframes on that. Okay, I'm good. So we'll go here, maybe we'll just add a full screen video. So I'm gonna do Control I or Command I to import a video, and let's just find like a motion loop of some sort. So we're gonna import just a motion loop, and I can just drag this straight into here if I want. So we'll just drop it maybe down here at the bottom. Okay, I can turn off I'm just gonna delete this video here, and now we have our new scene right there. And we'll call this is scene 3. Boom. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to my main composition, and there we have our scene 3. So another way that I want to show you how to animate maybe a layer on, or another technique that we can use is to use track mats. So you can see this little thing over here in this track mat option right here. So this is I'm gonna go through this sort of quickly, but hopefully you'll be able to follow. So this is a lot like a clipping mask inside of Photoshop. So I'm going to make another layer. So we're just going to make a shape layer. Make sure I'm clicked off any layer down here. So, you know, if I was clicked on a layer and I wanted to make a shape layer and I draw a circle, I'm drawing a mask on that layer. I don't want to do that. So I want to make sure I don't have any layers selected down here. I'm going to go up to my circle layer, and we have a circle right there. So again, I'm going to put my crosshair right in the middle, draw that circle, and I'm going to hold down Shift and then also Command to make sure I have a circle drawn. And I want to, let's just draw a basic circle. All right, so just like this, boom. All right, so the next thing I'm gonna do is I want to create an animation with this circle. So I want it to go from scaled very small to very big. And the way to do that is I'm going to go into the ellipse down here, and I'm gonna go to the transform option, and I'm gonna go to scale. I'm gonna click, just make a keyframe there. I'm gonna stretch that all the way up, okay? And then I'm going to move this back here. Actually, let's move it. I want it to happen kind of right on top of, right in the very beginning of this third scene there. So now I want to make that scale be 0. Hit enter. All right, so now you can see that it kind of scales up very quickly right there. That's good. Maybe I'll stretch that time out some. And I want to use that option to where we right click and we go to Keyframe Assistant, Easy Ease. And I'm going to adjust that layer speed on that speed graph, that graph editor. So now it kind of opens up like that. Okay, so how do we use track mats? What is a track mat? So again, it's a way to mask out other layers or reveal them using this option. So over to the left-hand side, we see this track mat option. If you don't see this, you can go and click on this toggle switches button down here. But basically what's happening is we have our shape layer that we just selected, right? It's gonna scale up. So what we wanna do is we want this circle to basically create somewhat like a stencil for our main background. And the way we're going to do that is by using the track mat. So whatever layer that you want to be the stencil, for instance this circle, we want that layer to be on top of the layer we want to actually reveal. So for instance, this scene 3 is right here, and this is the one that we want it to be revealed. So I'm going to go to track mat. I'm going to click where it says none. So when you click on that, you're going to have some options. We have alpha mat, we have alpha mat inverted, we have Luma mat and Luma mat inverted. So what we're going to use for this one is we're going to use alpha mat. So I'm going to click on alpha mat, and you can see now that it's basically cutting that scene out. And as that circle animates on, it's showing up that entire layer. Now if I did alpha mat inverted, it's just going to do obviously the exact opposite. So that's another way to do some sort of transition. The other options that are down here are Luma mat and Luma mat inverted, and this is where you would want to, if you're utilizing some sort of black and white layer, Luma mat is going to be showing you anything that is in white, and the other option would be, you know, Luma mat inverted will basically be revealing whatever is in black, much like a clipping mask inside of Photoshop. So for now, we're just going to stick with alpha mat, and it's going to show that little reveal right there. So that's just a really fun way to do some reveals. A couple other things we want to add to this project. You want to just going to show you really quickly how to add some motion blur if you want to add some motion blur to certain layers. So I'm going to use this first layer here. I'm going to go into our scene 1, double click on that, and inside of here we want to turn on the motion blur for this layer. So I'm going to go back to this toggle switches and modes, click on that, and you're going to have a few options up here. These are where we're going to focus. So we have a 3D object, which we'll have to get into in another video. This is an adjustment layer option, and then the motion blur option. So we're just going to turn this one on for now. And when you turn it on, you can see that now it's a little bit blurry. And that's because it's registering this as a flying layer, and it's giving it some realistic motion blur. You do want to make sure that you have your global motion blur turned on. So if I turn this off, it's going to turn off for everything. So you can turn that on, and then you select your individual layers with these little buttons here. Gives it a little bit more of a realistic look by how it moves. And sometimes you want it and sometimes you don't, but that's just another fun option there. And if interested, you can even hide some layers. So if you just don't want to see this, if you have a lot of layers that are doing something, maybe some effects that you just don't really need to see anymore, you can turn them off by clicking our little man face right there, peeking over the wall, and then you can turn that on globally that way. So it just hides them. It keeps them on the screen, but it hides them from your layer panel. So we could get into a lot more details about 3D objects and cameras and layers, some depth of field and things, and we'll save all that for another video, but this will just hopefully get you started as far as the very basics. So lastly, let's talk about how to maybe add some audio and export our video. So I'm going to go back to my main composition, and if I wanted to add audio to this, I would just click over here, and again, you're just going to add a layer of some sort of audio file. So I'm just going to go into find something quickly here. Here we go. All right, so here's an audio layer. This is a WAV file. You can use WAV or MP3 or whatever you want to do. Then you can just drag it down here. I typically do not edit audio inside of After Effects because it's a bit of a nightmare. I usually do all of my main editing in Premiere for my sound, whether it be sound effects or audio or music, and then bring that into After Effects once I have sort of my locked audio piece. Okay, so how do we export this and how do we get this out of After Effects? So the next thing we want to do is make sure that your in and out points are set to the right position. So you can use B on the keyboard for your in point and then N on the keyboard for your out point. So we want all of our scenes here. We don't want to add this extra bit down here. That was just some extra room for us to play with. So I'm going to take my playhead. I'm going to hold down Shift so that it locks right to the end of that scene. And then I'm going to hit N on the keyboard, and that's going to move that bracket down to right where we want it to end. All right, so we have our entire scene. Our little project is made. This is in the very beginning, which is good. So now we want to export this. A long time ago, I would go to Composition and Add to Render Queue, which you can. It'll open up this new tab, and you can go in here and change some of your settings and set the settings that you want. You can click on these little blue letters, so like go to lossless, and I can say I want to go to Format, and actually I would go to like QuickTime and change this to something different here. But typically now I don't really use this option very much at all. I'm going to go back to main comp, and I'm going to go to Composition and Add to Media Encoder Queue. And you do want to make sure that you are selected on this composition before you add to it. You can also just click up here to main comp and go to Composition, Add to Render Queue. So if you did want to export maybe a lot of different comps at one time, as you could click on all of these and do Add to Media Encoder Queue, and it'll add all of those at the same time. So I'm just going to do main comp, but just make sure that your brackets are right where you want them to be. So main comp, composition, Add to Media Encoder Queue, and this is going to open up Media Encoder, which is just a rendering engine, I guess, for Adobe programs. So this is the window that would open up once you open up Media Encoder, and I like to use this because this will work in the background, and you can go back into After Effects and make tweaks or organize or whatever you want to do. So it'll add your project right here, so you can see main comp has been added to our queue, and this is going to come down to your preference on what you need, but you can export tons of different versions, ProRes and all sorts of different codecs and formats, but I typically just do an MP4 video set to maybe a high bitrate. So what I would do is I could click on this and say, okay, I'm gonna do H.264, then I can click on this and it's gonna open up another window that we can make some more adjustments to our render settings. It's always good to double check and make sure everything's set. So we will export video and audio. All this is good. Our width is 1920 by 1080. If you wanted to change that, you can just uncheck that right there. All this is really pretty much good to go. I'm gonna scroll down a little bit. You can adjust these if you want. So you can change your target bit rate. So this will bring the quality down, but also bring the size down. I usually keep it right around between 15 and 25 or so. Maybe bump it up a little bit higher if you're going to use a lot of darks or some gradients or things. That might help a little bit. And if everything is good, you can click on output name and tell it where you want to save it. We'll just maybe we'll throw it on the desktop for now. Hit OK. And so then you hit OK, and it's ready to go. All you need to do is hit the play button. So when you click on the play button, it'll start processing down here and it'll start exporting your video. So obviously this is going to be very different based on what your machine can do. If you have a lot of motion blur or depth of field or something crazy like that, then it's going to obviously increase your render time. So just be patient with it. If you have a big project, maybe that's something you run overnight or something like that. So that'll export and that'll create your video, and you will be good to go. So here's our final video, and it is most certainly not any sort of masterpiece, but you have an idea of you know, what it can export. So now we can see our scenes are animating in. We have our video over here. I did okay. Have our scene 3. Okay. So that's pretty much it. That's going to really sum up our entire, really the very bare bones basic stuff of After Effects. We'll maybe do some more videos about how we get into 3D layers and depth of field and some different things like that. So hopefully this is enough to just get your feet wet, get you started, remove some of those fears that we talked about to where you can use After Effects on a daily basis, even though you don't have to know every little thing about it. So I hope this helps. If you have any more questions or comments, please leave them below and we will be sure to answer those. And thanks so much for watching.